My name is Erin Cameron, and I am a collaborative composer. Join me in the search for a career in classical music. This is the Making Noise podcast. It's really weird. Like, one of the things that they say in this documentary is even though you're not paying for these services, what that means is if you're not paying for it, then that means you're the product. Yeah, right?
Yeah, I feel like I feel the same way about that as I did with, I'm trying to remember, is one of the big credit companies that does your credit report got hacked. I can't remember which one it was.
Capital One or?
No, it was
like TransUnion or something?
It was, yeah, I think it was it Experian? Was hacked, and then they said pretty much everybody's pretty much everybody's personal information had been compromised with this hack. And I remember at some point I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, if everybody's personal information has been compromised, has anyone's information really been compromised? Because I don't know, it's like at some point it's like I'm so used to hearing about my personal information ending up here and there, and however many times my credit card has been hacked and I had to get a new one. That's happened several times. And at some point it's just kind of, I don't know, it's not surprising anymore. I don't even find myself getting angry about it the way I used to, just because I'm so used to it.
That's a sort of interesting thing too, because then that almost makes it like commonplace then, And
I think it is. I mean, I really do.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think about in 2008 with the housing market crash and how all the banks, there was the bailout, and the common people, the middle class, the lower class, and everyone, right? Like they were the ones who got their lives were compromised, but the banks were okay because they got the bailout. It makes me think of, I'm not saying they're the same thing, but it kind of just makes me think about that, like these bigger corporations and companies and stuff that have this impenetrable, wall that, I don't know, like people can't get through that, And
then it's impossible to separate the large corporations themselves from the people who use them. I mean, because we can all stand here, on our moral high ground and say, Facebook is not for me. I'm not going to use Facebook anymore. But Facebook is an indispensable tool for a lot of small businesses who advertise through Facebook, for people who sell things through Facebook, people who advertise concerts through Facebook. And so it's a complex issue. I mean, like the bank bailout, because, nobody liked that. But then at the same time, what would have happened if the banks hadn't been bailed out?
Exactly.
It would have been really bad. And so, yeah, it's so impossible to separate the two. We can say like we're tired of having our personal information constantly compromised through Facebook, through Instagram, through all of these, Google, Amazon, all these huge corporations that know all these, intimate details of our lives. But there's really, it would be extremely complicated to think about the ways that we could restructure without them, because it would do a lot of damage to a lot of lives and a lot of people if they were suddenly not there anymore.
Yeah, that I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that's like I think the heart of a lot of it is as detrimental as a lot of this is. It's sort of a part of the system. It is a part of the system, and it's so necessary. Like, like you said, with small businesses needing Facebook as a way to, communicate and provide services for their clients. And even in our industry as musicians, like it's we rely so heavily on networking in order for opportunities and for us to have a career, So, and all that isn't to say that social media and all that is inevitably a terrible thing, It's not. Like the opportunity to like connect with people, especially people we haven't talked to or seen in a long time. You know, you and I are doing this right now because of social media. You know, like if Zoom wasn't a thing, I mean, I don't know if is that considered social media? Zoom or Skype or anything?
You know, I'm not sure. I've always thought of social media specifically as kind of like a software you could like follow, message, and all of that.
Yeah.
And it seems like Zoom is a little separate from that because it's just a direct conference calling tool. But that's actually a really interesting question. I'm not completely sure.
Yeah, so someone recently had said, what platform were they talking about? Oh God, I can't remember. Zillow. Zillow as a social media, like as their favorite social media platform. I'm like, is Zillow a social media? Like, do you create a profile and like each other's apartments? Like,
I love that. Or I think one of my favorite funny things is the Venmo, the money sharing app, because it is also a social media app. And so whenever I log in, you know, just to send money to repay somebody for something, it shows me a list of all of my friends and it connects with Facebook. So it shows me all of my Facebook friends and who they paid and what they paid for, but not the amount that they paid for it. And it's kind of mesmerizing in its own weird way because then I'll see people, oh, you know, my friend from high school who went off to college and started a small business is, you know, now receiving money from a client, and I can see that on Venmo, and it's fascinating. I mean, I don't know, I didn't know that I wanted to see that, but now I can.
now you have that. Yeah. What does that provide? Like genuinely, what does that provide? I'm a little uncertain about that one.
Well, I'm not sure either. I mean, for a long time I didn't understand the difference. I mean, I didn't understand the difference between Venmo and then just other services you can use to just pay somebody money.
Yeah.
For for some reason, but um, I don't know if maybe they were thinking if we can make a social media aspect to it that'll somehow make ours slightly more appealing than other money sharing applications. And I don't know. I don't know if they've been successful in that, but I sure use it a lot. And I do look down and I see what my friends are paying for. So we're probably working very well for me.
That's so interesting. I don't have Venmo. I'm most likely gonna get it because I know that it's widely used, and I have a PayPal account. But I figured the more sort of options I have to make it easier for someone if someone needs to send me money for whatever capacity, the more options available, that's probably better. You know?
That's what I found, and because everybody has their favorite.
Mm-hmm. Do you operate with both PayPal, Venmo, or any other, like what's another one? Stripe?
Oh, I've never heard of that.
I think is it Stripe? I don't even know. I seen it on my my website. I use Squarespace to host my website, and to sell things, they give you options like, do you want to use PayPal? Do you want to use Google? Or I think Stripe was a third one. I've never
heard of that.
Yeah. But do you use several accounts or?
I have accounts at pretty much everything else. I mean, Venmo, PayPal, Facebook Pay, Zelle, Cash App.
Oh, Zelle. Yeah, that's another one. Zelle. Yeah. So to anyone who's listening and owes Erin money,
yeah, send it to me.
Yeah, you don't have an excuse. There are options.
I also accept cash or check.
Exactly. Yeah. Save everyone a little bit more money because then you don't have to pay transaction fees. That's always such a bummer when you're expecting like, oh, someone's gonna send me money, but then there's like $1.75 missing because of fees or something, and you know.
It feels like we're not making enough anyway, and then they're stripping away at it.
It's that having to use that middleman, that third party. It's like that's how they make their money, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They make money by taking some of your money. That it's such an interesting tax. Exactly. Yeah. Do you because you have this teaching job, is this like your main source of income right now?
Yes,
Do
it's
you
a
have
full-time position.
okay.
Um, yeah, I teach full-time, technically 40 hours a week,
Mm,
give or take, um, teaching clarinet lessons at Arkansas State University. And I teach one class, just clarinet techniques for music education.
mm.
So it's mostly future band directors who are taking clarinet techniques in order to learn how to play the instrument better so that they can teach it in their classroom.
Oh, you're perfect for that. I mean, like you're so good with communicating and like because I know when we work together and stuff and talking about the ideas that I would have and how you would communicate to me the way that it would like physically be working with like the embouchure or something like that. I remember you making it very clear and so it's coming like I don't play a wind instrument, so
But
so
you
that's
write a lot for winds.
I write a lot for winds, yeah. Mainly
Flute,
saxophone.
saxophone,
Yeah.
bass clarinet.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But that's great though. I think you're amazing for that. So you have a private studio, you teach the ed majors clarinet technique. There was a third one in there or
I also teach clarinet ensemble, which is it's a little bit weird this semester because normally we would have a clarinet choir
Mhm.
for all of the clarinet players. That's not can't really happen in the traditional way this semester because of guidelines about social distancing and because we're not actually our guidelines at the university don't allow us to play together in a space in an indoor space.
Mhm.
So we would either have to meet outside, which is just logistically kind of difficult to handle with that many people. So we're going to do a virtual ensemble,
That
which hopefully will be fun, but a little bit different than meeting together in person.
yeah, I can definitely see a lot of the complications and barriers that creates, doing it all online and stuff, especially as an ensemble. Um,
Yeah, and we have obviously band and orchestra and other large ensembles here too, and so none of them can meet in the normal capacity in person. So they're doing like the band is doing really they're actually doing like a creative projects semester, um, which I think is awesome. And so the students get the chance to enroll in a creative project of their choice.
mhm.
So one of them is like chamber ensembles with just a few people that are playing together. One of them is actually composition.
Hmm.
So they write a piece for somebody else in the class and then get a chance to have it performed and workshopped. So I met with them a couple weeks ago to talk with them about writing compositions for most of them for the first time. But they get to choose, and like there's also like a history option, and then one of them is like an education class, like a education literature class, like music for middle and high school level students.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I think it's turning out to be a really cool thing because they're getting these experiences they wouldn't have had, if it'd been a normal semester playing together.
Yeah.
Even though it's really sad, also. But
Yeah. That's through the wind ensemble.
it's through the band. So there's two bands, and it's sort of like you choose your own adventure um,
Mhm.
based on what you're interested in and
Oh, that's cool.
all
That's really
that.
that's so interesting. I mean, I love that there's such a variety in that because especially as a student, you're 18, maybe even 17, but like 18, 19 years old, like you're trying things out, you're discovering new things and new experiences and stuff and you know, I when I was like 17, I wasn't going to go to college. I had no aspirations to go to college because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to study. And then, so like with that in mind, it's like, what 17-year-old really knows what they want to do for the rest of their life?
Mhm.
Like, and it's not to say that 17-year-olds don't have a clue about anything, but like, that's a tall order, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I think that's so great that the ensemble's providing this track where it's like, yeah, try this, try that, do this, do that. And then let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that as well. And I mean, I agree. I mean, the university system is so challenging because, we have such a, there's a lot of social pressure on young people, and, like that there's an expectation to go to college.
Mm.
Um, and it's, I don't know, that's something I think about a lot, especially working with a lot of young college students, some of whom are figuring out, many of whom are still figuring out what they want to do. And like you said, it's a huge choice.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, it's hard because it's kind of like, you're making a huge financial decision to go to college, taking on oftentimes a whole lot of student loan debt, depending on, where you choose to go and, what your financial situation is, but choosing to, take on a whole lot of debt to go to college, and then you have to kind of figure out what you want to do.
Yeah. It's it's something that when I was that age, I didn't think that much about, and I ended up going to college only because the local county college near me had like an instant application day, and I never even took SATs in high school because I wasn't going to go to college. So like, why would I take SATs? But because it was a county college, you didn't have to take the SATs to get in. Once you were accepted, you had to take a placement exam to see if you need to take remedial classes or you can just go straight into like college algebra, and so, yeah, I went through that. That was my process. That was like my, I'm going to college now, like story.
That's awesome. So I don't know if we've ever talked about this before. So did you do like an associate's degree and then, because I know you got a 4-year degree after that.
Yeah, I got my associates at the County College of Morris, which is in Randolph, New Jersey. It's funny because the County College of Morris turns into CCM, so then you
Cincinnati.
Exactly, yeah. And it's funny too because after that I went to Montclair State University, which turns into MSU. So I mean, there's so many weird there's those two weird connections right there where the abbreviation of the school also connects to a well-known Midwestern school of music.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my path essentially. Was like I got my associates for music performance and classical guitar, and then when I went to Montclair, I studied music theory and composition.
Wow. So you got an associate's in music, because there's not a whole lot of programs that offer an associate's.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the county college I went to is an exceptional school, and I think in 2015 or 16, they built an actual music building with a recording studio and yeah, I was
That's awesome.
I was so excited to learn about that. I mean, I haven't looked into other county colleges or community colleges, but part of why I went to that school was I lived in this county called Sussex County, but Sussex County Community College didn't have a music program. So I had to go to the County College of Morris instead. And fortunately, Sussex County Community College paid for the classes that they didn't offer.
Oh, that's great. So you were
Yeah,
able to, you had that cost covered, and then you were doing it through the local county one.
exactly. Yeah. So
Oh,
like
that's nice.
any of the music classes I took, I didn't have to pay for because County College of the Sussex County Community College didn't offer it. So they covered it because I was a county resident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting little loophole right there,
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But it is pretty unusual. I mean, because I'm trying to think. I mean, where I'm from Southwest Missouri, and where I'm from, there. I mean, I'm not aware of any community college anywhere near where I grew up that offered an associates of music, at least at the time. I know they had music classes, but I don't think that I don't think that there was any way for you to get an associate's in music. I think you could just take some classes and then transfer to a 4-year. Like you would just take gen ed classes and then transfer to a 4-year and do your music classes there. So you got pretty lucky.
Oh, I feel so lucky. I am incredibly proud to have gone through that institution. And all of my friends, everyone I know that has studied there, I mean, no one could say anything bad about it. You know, it's just a great place all around. And yeah, anyone listening who lives in northwestern New Jersey, County College of Morris, you want to study music, Joe Bellotti, Jose Bevia, Richard Gردone, all amazing instructors. They're great people. So a little plug there for them. But so you've had such an interesting geographical lineage, or whatever you want to call that, like your geographical path. You're from Missouri, right?
Yeah.
And then could you lay that out for me, like, or for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Southwest Missouri in Springfield, which is close to Branson. If you follow the entertainment industry, there's a lot of or there used to be like Dolly Parton's show is based in Branson, Missouri. So that's where I'm from. And then I did my undergraduate degree at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, which is just north of Chicago. So where you're living, about where you're living now, a little bit north of where you're living now.
Yeah.
And then I went 4 hours east to Bowling Green, Ohio for my master's degree.
And that's where we met.
That's where we met. Yeah. And it's pretty close to Toledo. And then for my doctorate, I went to the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas, which is Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then now I've gone kind of northeast up to Jonesboro, Arkansas, which is actually, it's pretty close. It's about an hour outside of Memphis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
that is just a zigzag, like.
And ironically, I am closer now to my relatives in Missouri geographically than I've ever been before. So it's like I went out and got all this education, then just came back, ended up pretty close to where I started. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's everything I could have hoped for. I like to be close to my family.
How far away are you from your family now?
4 hours.
That's not bad. That's not even a half a day drive, you know?
Oh yeah. It's yeah, you can go up and back in a day, although I don't really like to do that, but
yeah. Yeah, it's 4 hours, 8 hours, at least 8 hours of driving, right? Because accounting for any traffic or whatever.
There's no traffic. It's Missouri and Arkansas.
See, look at you can see my lack of understanding of the area, that I've clearly never been there. So
yeah, I am really liking it so far. I mean, I'm looking forward to post-COVID when I can spend some more time in Memphis.
Oh.
But because there's a lot to see in Memphis. But the thing about Arkansas, its slogan is the natural state, or its motto, or not motto. Its handle, I guess. It's the natural state, and it is gorgeous. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I hear people giving Arkansas kind of a bad rap.
But tell them to shut up.
Beautiful. The state is gorgeous, and there's so much nature, hiking like you wouldn't believe. And there's and it's all really nearby. So you don't have to drive very far to get out to some amazing hiking.
That's great.
It's a just a physically beautiful place to live.
Is it kind of at the tail end of the Appalachian Mountains?
It would be the Ozark. It's outside the Ozark Mountains. So it would be, it's technically not in the Ozarks region. It's to the east.
Hmm.
And the Ozark Mountains are not really mountains.
Just a couple of bumps in the ground, or
Yeah, my understanding is that the Ozark Mountains are, because I always wondered this because I grew up in it's the Ozarks region, and everybody, like Ozark, Missouri is right next to where I grew up. And there's the Ozark Mountains, and everybody's always talking about the Ozark Mountains. And finally, when I was a kid, I asked my mom, where are the mountains? Because everybody's talking about them, but I don't see them. And she explained, well, the mountains are so old. They've been around for so long that they're not really mountains anymore. They're more like hills.
oh, it's interesting.
So, I mean,
Wow.
they are there, but they're just not, it's not a mountain like, you go to Mount Everest or you go, to a real mountain range and hike the mountains. They're just, they're kind of big hills.
Mm.
So
what has been something for you, because you've gone through all these different states and had all these different experiences of like geographically, what has that been like now that you're in Arkansas and clearly psyched about it, which is great. But what is it? What has that been like? The flatlands of Ohio, city life of Evanston in a way, right?
mhm. I mean, I don't know. I think I hear from people a lot that they feel like they could only survive in certain kinds of cities or places. Like I hear a lot like, "Oh, I'm a city person. I couldn't handle being in a smaller town," or um, I have to be at least within driving distance of a large city.
Hmm.
Or then the reverse. Sometimes like people tell, especially people I know who come from smaller towns, say things like, I could never live in a big city. I couldn't handle doing public transit, all of the things that go along with living in a bigger city. And I don't know. I feel like I've lived in a bunch of different places, and each of them is unique and wonderful in its own way.
Hmm.
And I don't feel that I've ever lived in a place that I didn't like, because every place has its own, idiosyncrasies. I guess every place has um, its own people, its own music that gets played a lot, its own restaurants, and its own culture. And I think it's really fun to move to a new place and kind of discover what the culture of that place is about. And
Hmm.
as fun and engaging for me in a smaller place like Jonesboro, Arkansas, it's just as interesting and engaging for me as living in Chicago, because you're not going to go to everything in Chicago. Like there's all this stuff going on, or at least pre-COVID, I guess. But even with COVID, there's so much going on, but you're not going to go to all of that. You're going to go to a few things that really interest you. And I feel the same way. There's things going on everywhere. There's events that happen everywhere, and um, there are different kinds of events for sure. But they're you know you don't have to be in a place where there's an infinite amount of stuff going on in order to feel like there's events and concerts and activities that you can attend and be a part of, and feel like you're really involved in the culture of your place.
Hmm.
If that
That's
makes sense.
Oh no, that makes total sense. I think there's something in there where I'm really curious about. I think a lot of people could benefit from. If do you have any thoughts as to? Oh, see, I don't know how to ask this either. There's something about you that when you're in these places, what is it that? See, I don't know how to ask this. Hmm. How are you finding like you said, there's nowhere you've ever been that you didn't enjoy, right? And I'm sure you've experienced this at Bowling Green, but there were some people I talked to who were just frustrated about Bowling Green, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you do, or is there anything that you do to try to ensure that you're finding the positive things about where you are? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, and I've heard, I mean, Bowling Green, that's definitely the smallest place that I've lived. Jonesboro is about twice the size of Bowling Green.
Hmm.
Um, but Bowling Green is definitely it's a small, maybe I shouldn't call it a town. I don't think it's a small city for
Mhm.
sure. And I heard the same things that you just mentioned. There's a lot of people I heard who said that they loved going to the university there, but didn't like being in the town itself just because it was so small that there wasn't enough going on. Um, and I guess my perspective, maybe one of the things that I have always thought is that um, when wherever you live, you always are an active participant in creating the culture of where you live. You're not there to experience, some sort of, just general, culture that everybody else is creating. Well, you show up. Everybody, regardless of whether you're an artist, a musician, or if you are a realtor or you work in a completely separate business, but everybody's an active participant in creating the culture of the place where they are. So part of me, when I think about a place the size of Bowling Green, thinks, if you're not interested and engaged by what's going on there, it's a town of 30,000 people. You're one of them. Go make something interesting. I mean, go put on a concert that you want to attend, right? I mean, because that's, in a city, I think a city like Chicago or New York City, there's enough going on that sometimes you can forget that, right? You can go out and just, you know, I don't know. I mean, if you're going out, you're already part of the culture, but I think you maybe what I mean is that it kind of takes longer to break in a larger city as you get to know, just because there's so many people there and so many events. But when you're in a smaller place, there's opportunities there too. I mean, where I am in a smaller music department, I mean, we still have so many events. Like this week, we still have, I think, 4 or 5 concerts just this week at the university. And this is, I mean, the town is 77,000. But
Wow.
then there's also opportunities there because then, like I'm in the early stages of planning my next recital, which will hopefully be next semester. But that, that's one, there I'm going to try to become part of the culture too, and, perform, the music that I want to hear in Jonesboro. And, um, and I'm looking forward to, like, my students putting on concerts as well. And the various activities that they're interested in and putting, the kinds of music they're putting together. That's all part of the culture of the place as well. So there's opportunities in smaller places. I think people are afraid, and also in the new music community too. I mean, because a lot of us have lived in larger areas and have, gotten the chance, to go to like contemporary music events quite frequently because there's such a large population. There's more people interested in putting on shows, but contemporary music happens everywhere, and that's something I'm definitely going to be performing a lot of here in Arkansas. So I guess that was a long-winded way of saying that if you think of yourself as an active participant in creating the culture of where you live, I think you'll find that any place can be an interesting and engaging place to live.
Oof. That was great. Oh my God. I'm so glad. I mean, your response to my terribly worded question was fantastic. I love that. I love that so much. And I think that's important because part of it, especially for the people we were interacting with, they were all grad students mainly, and because they were grad students, they already had their experience wherever they went for undergrad and at Bowling Green, and sort of having that. I often, it felt kind of cynical, and what you're saying is so much more optimistic and positive. The whole idea of kind of in a way creating your own opportunities.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember when I was an undergrad, I took an entrepreneurship class, and it I didn't have to take it. I just decided to because I thought, oh, that's a good thing. Like I need to learn entrepreneurship in order to become, I'm doing heavy air quotes because this is a podcast, entrepreneurship in order to be a successful musician. And I'm not discounting that because those tools are incredibly valuable. And I remember in this class that I actually remember this very clearly. We had a guest speaker, I think the third day of class, and the guest speaker was telling us, you should all just go out there and just do what you want to do. And so I left the class and I was thinking to myself, yeah, I'm going to do that. And so I dropped the class because I was like, this class is not doing anything for me. I can go out and do the things that I want to do without, I could spend that, the hour and a half, twice a week that I was in the class. I didn't have to be in to do the projects I want to do. And I'm not necessarily encouraging people who are taking an entrepreneurship class to drop the class, but to some extent, I think I appreciate that he said that because it's true. You can take, whatever entrepreneurship class, but you just gotta just go out there, do what you want, present your music, share it with Facebook. And it's it's an attitude. It's really an attitude. Like, is your idea like, how are you thinking of your art and what you're doing as how am I? I'm going to interrupt myself because I thought of a really good metaphor.
Please.
When I read an article a few years ago that was it was called Women Who Rock. Uh-huh. It was about women who played rock and roll music throughout history, like since the 1960s. And the article made a big point of saying, I wish I could remember who wrote it, but highly encourage you to look it up, said that the title was intentional, Women Who Rock, instead of Women in Rock. Mm. The idea being that women who perform rock music are rock musicians. Not that rock music is some big, behemoth that women have to somehow break their way into and join, which is what is implied by women in rock. So I think you can kind of take a lesson from that in how to live your life as an artist or as a musician, whether or not you do so professionally. You could think of music as being like this thing you have to break into, like, wow, we've got Beethoven, we've got Mozart, we've got huge big name performers, we've got orchestras, we've got the behemoths of classical music, if you will, that we've got to break into. But instead, if you perform, compose, listen to, enjoy music or art in any way, then you already are an artist. And you're already creating your own art that you don't need to you don't have to break in. You don't have to think about breaking into the system. And I think there's nothing that has illustrated that more clearly to me than the COVID-19 pandemic, because what we thought of as the behemoths of music, things like the Metropolitan Opera, major symphony orchestras, they can't perform, or they can't perform at full capacity in the way that their structure is designed for. So many of these things that we've been, thinking of, in my performance degree for my undergrad, that was, always the emphasis, that, oh, you're majoring in performance, you probably want to play in an orchestra. And now looking at the climate for large orchestras in the United States, it's a very different world than it was when I finished my undergraduate degree, because now, looking at how many orchestras are struggling, it's tragic. Mm-hmm. It's really sad. And at the same time, it really makes, it makes you evaluate like what you view as being, like the behemoth of music, how I think about breaking into the world of music. Because now, many of the orchestras that I might have played with may not make it through. I sure hope they will, but you're hearing things like the Metropolitan Opera, is suspending performances until the fall of 2021. And thinking about, all of the work that all of those musicians have done to break into that system, and how many people have wanted to and have been unable to. And at the end of the day, everybody's sort of been affected in somewhat of a comparable way. I mean, you've lost the ability to do your to have your performing career, at least as you planned it. And so, I don't know. It's tragic. It's sad and it's awful. And at the same time, it's like now, everybody, we have to really rethink about like what music, I guess, what the industry of music is now. It's so different than what it was even just a year ago because of all the changes that have happened.
It's yeah, that's there's so much in what you just what you just said there with the whole issue with COVID-19 and where the music industry was and now where it is today and where it's potentially going, which I think a lot of us are uncertain about. And then even what you were saying earlier about not having, finding ways to sort of create your own opportunities and not allowing certain barriers that might be presented to prevent you from getting to where you want to go.
Mhm.
It's I'm curious with your experience as a grad student at Bowling Green, your doctorate from UNT, and now professor in Arkansas. What has it been like with this sort of thing with your students? Like, do your students come to you with these sort of questions, or like, do you have these sort of conversations with them? And the landscape of what the music industry is, and uh, it's a heavy conversation. So I'm curious about that.
It is. It's a very heavy conversation, and it's an interesting conversation to have in the context of where I teach. Most of my students are music education majors. Um, the I guess one of the strange ways that music education works now that so much is online and it's hard to play in groups is that people I know in the field who are band directors, orchestra directors, choir directors, they still have their jobs and they're still working for the most part because they're employed by K-12 and university systems. With There are exceptions, and I probably will mention that more in a second. But for people I know who are employed in music, teaching high school band, middle school band, or assistant band directing, choir directing, those kinds of jobs, those are ironically have been some of the most stable jobs in the music industry with COVID, because those jobs are not being eliminated on the same scale that performing arts, like gigging jobs, orchestral jobs, opera, those kinds of jobs have been eliminated. So with a lot of my students right now, I am kind of taking the approach of, let's finish your degree, because in a weird way, this is going to be a controversial statement, I think. I don't think it's a bad time to be in school. And the reason I think that is because even though the university experience is not going to be what it was if if we could meet in person and if we could do ensembles together and play together and be together in class, even though the university experience is not going to be the same, it's definitely better to be in school than to be trying to find a job in your field now in an economy where those jobs are not available.
Mm.
So in a way, I haven't addressed it as much as I thought I might, simply because I have a certain amount of optimism. We know that the virus will pass. We don't know when it will. We hope it will be soon, but we do know that there will be a future without the virus. And at the point that that happens, there will be jobs in, especially in music education. But we know that there's an end to it at some point. And so my focus largely has been, and this actually surprises me because like you, I was thinking it was going to be more of a topic that was going to come up with more frequency. But as it is, I think we've become, within my studio and with the people I've been working with, we've become very like present focused in terms of, we have students who are here to finish a degree. We need to find the ways to give them the best experience now while they're in college, and to get them, to do our best to give them the experiences that they need in order to be successful later on, to the best of our abilities, online, socially distant, with masks and with all the precautions. I guess time will tell if that's the right approach. I do worry. I mean, I worry especially about students who are finishing their degrees soon. But I also know that based on the students I work with, that they're very resilient. Many of them have experience working in other fields already, in other kinds of work. And so I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because I think my students are awesome, but I also think that they have, if worst comes to worst, and the teaching job, the music job that they're hoping to get out of school either isn't available, or it's much more competitive because, more people are applying for it. I'm confident that my students will be able to find employment in some capacity until the time at which they are able to find the kind of job that they're looking for.
Wow.
Hopefully not being too, too optimistic, not realist. I'm hoping that I'm not being, non-realistic about it. I want to be a realist, but yeah. I do believe it will pass at some point, and I do believe in the resilience of my students.
I love what you said about the thinking of the presentness, like just focusing on what's within our immediate reach, and I was talking about this I think yesterday with someone else about just prioritizing and focusing on the things that are within your control. And because there's so much external things that are happening right now that is out of our control, and it's very easy to just, it's such a racy time right now, and I mean that in a sense, like things are topics are sensitive. People are, we've been cooped up for a long time, and now we're still not, like the level of comfort is slowly but still not there. And I love that you mentioned that, having that presentness and focusing on this is what's important right now. Is that what you mean by that when you say like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's both. I mean, it's out of immediate necessity, but also because that, I mean, for me, that's something I'm always trying to be better at, is living in the present. Because I tend to be extremely future focused to the detriment of the present. I'm always thinking ahead to like what's happening tomorrow. Do I have to do something tomorrow? Do I have to submit something tomorrow? How am I going to, structure my day tomorrow? And I often do that, to the detriment of just living in the moment and enjoying the life that I'm living as it is right now. And I think, I mean, COVID is, the precautions that we have to take in our department and in the state of Arkansas because of COVID kind of, I think, force you into the present in a certain way. Because like as an example, the class that I teach, I'm teaching online because the capacity of the class is too large for any of the classrooms, or the classroom which we've been assigned. So I have to teach the class online. And it's impossible to get ahead of myself while I'm teaching online, because at any given moment I have to be keeping track of the technology. Am I still connected to the internet? Is video turned on? How's the camera angle? Can they see what they need to? Keeping track of, students, okay, somebody sent me a message. Somebody also just dropped out of the meeting. I have these things that I need to get through. But then I have to, if I'm not focused in the present, I can forget important things like, for example, if I'm sharing a video, it's super irritating in Zoom, by the way, that you have to check the share audio button. Otherwise, for the audio, I'm always showing a video and then getting chat messages. Hey, I think you forgot to share the audio with that video. But the point being, if I get ahead of myself, it always happens when I get ahead of myself, that, okay, I'm going to show the video. I get the video going, and then my brain goes, okay, after the video, we need to do this and this and this. But if I'm not focused on the video, then I, will forget to turn on the sound, I'll forget to do just the immediate technological things that need to be done to keep the class running smoothly. So in a way, I think that's a mindset that I could take past COVID, is just, trying to do my best work in the moment, and to not be thinking so much about the future that I forget to enjoy the present.
That's I can imagine that being quite challenging if you're very forward thinking. How do you like sort of check yourself in a way to make sure that you're focusing on, like, do you have any sort of little mind tricks you do for yourself, or like put little post-it notes on the mirror and say, remember, right now matters,
I'm a huge fan of timers, because I'm the kind of person that will spend forever doing something unless there's a check on it. So I've been trying to be good about, whenever I'm doing something, setting the timer, and then when the timer goes off, the task is done. And then I don't have to worry about the future, because sometimes, I'll be working on it and I'll go, oh, what if it takes me, 2 hours to plan my hour-long class tomorrow, and then I don't have time to do, to respond to emails, practice, or do the other things I'd planned to do. But if I set the timer, and the problem is that I don't stop when the timer goes off. That's but at the very least, the timer goes off, then I know mentally, like, oh, I should have been done at this time. It helps. It's not a perfect system, but it does help, so that I'm at least trying to, that I don't have to worry about, oh, I'm getting to the next thing because it's on the timer. It's already going to happen when it's supposed to.
That's great. I think you're in a way like having someone else tell you, like, Erin, it's time to stop now. I think one thing is, real quick, by the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but I can go until 5:30 today, so we can go as long as you're ready to. Oh wait, you're not in Central Standard Time.
I'm in Central Standard Time.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can go until 5:30, and then, but if you need to go any earlier than that, that's totally fine. Just, send in the flag.
Maybe a little before that, maybe like around, would 5 be okay?
Totally.
Would that give you enough?
That's totally fine. Yeah. I mean, I'm already psyched on everything we've talked about thus far. So
cool.
Yeah, I think this is good. There's a lot of content you've already provided that I think people will get a lot out of.
You ask good questions.
Oh, thank you. It's fun to do this. I mean, it's so exciting too, because, like, we haven't even seen each other. I don't remember the last time we saw each other, honestly.
You know what I remember? I remember in Bowling Green, this is probably not the last time we saw each other, but this is what I remember. We went to that coffee shop, Grounds for Thought, and there was that guy. We were having this conversation in the noisy area of the cafe, and this guy got real mad because we were talking too loud.
Yes, I remember that very well, and I mean, I'm a loud person. I do speak very loudly. Like, what did he say? he came over and he was like, he put his arm down. He's like, I just wanted to come over and tell you I'm leaving because you're so loud.
I was so mad. I
I
was like,
yeah.
it's a restaurant and we're not even in the quiet zone. We're not even in the study area.
It was well, even it was that was right next to where the counter was too.
Yeah, I was at the front.
Where all the people are coming through, like the doors opening and closing, and like yeah, that was an interesting experience.
He must have been agitated about something else.
Yeah, he probably was. You know, he probably couldn't get to all his emails in time, and it was, you know,
And he decided to take it all out on us.
yeah, because we were having such a good time. Like, oh yeah, that I remember that. That was I don't remember exactly when that was, but yeah, that might have been one of the last times we may have seen each other. Um, yeah, and but that's why I really like doing this. Like everything, you know, the people I've done this with so far are people who I want to make sure I'm keeping in contact with, you know, and I'm so grateful and excited that you wanted to do this. So yeah, thank you for that.
Well, thanks for asking me.
Of course, of course. It's it's a yeah, it's sort of one of those things like you were saying before about uh like working in the present, you know, focusing on what you need to do right now. And that was one of the thoughts that I had where I was like, I'm notoriously terrible at keeping in contact with people. And like even with my family. And I'm not proud of that either. Like, you know, it's not like I'm purposefully trying to ignore people and stuff. I'm just not good at being, you know, keeping up and stuff. So this is just a great, you know, all that to say it's a great tool to do that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I have not been great about keeping in contact either.
Oh,
Um,
you are a busy person. You just started your professorship. That's something I would love to know is what has it been like for you starting this new job? Like you've been in the academic music system, if you will, for a long time. So you've had plenty of exposure and experience of it. But what is something about it that you I don't know how to ask that exactly. Like maybe you weren't expecting so much, or it's like, oh, this is, you know, I have to try to balance this in different ways now because I have this new priority or something.
you know, oddly enough, being a music professor is a lot more like being a music student than I thought it would be.
Really?
Yes. Um, I think I had this idea. I mean, it's directly linked to like the behemoth of music idea that like you know, especially as an undergrad. Okay, my professors know everything. They're the complete. They're 100% experts in you know in everything about their field. You know, they design their classes. They always know what's going on. They know what's happening. You know, and and I have to say, being a music professor now, it's I mean, you know, I started as a student at some point. You know, I when I was 8, I started piano. I was singing. You know, at some point, I picked up the clarinet. Went to college, got some graduate degrees. Kept learning, and then at some point, there was just a line drawn, and now I'm a music professor. But it's not like, you know, all of a sudden I became suddenly all that much more of an expert in my field as I was last year. It's just that I feel like I've been just sort of swimming along, learning new things every year, all the time. And then at some point, I kind of, I guess I transferred over to the other side. Um, but I don't know. That's it. It surprised me a little bit because um, I think, I mean, music schools, universities are, you know, it's based on interactions between professors and students, and everybody's part of that. You know, everybody's part of the culture. I'm saying the same things again, but I mean, I think as a student, I had an idea that I you know walk into music school and it's like it's all set up. You know, the professors made everything. They made their syllabus for the class. They designed, you know, all the teaching they're going to do. They're experts in all of this. And then I'm the student and I just walked in and I'm going to just like open up my brain and the knowledge is going to kind of
Just pour it right in.
infiltrate, and then the skull closes back, and then all the knowledge trickles back out when I have to take the exam. But but the point being that it's always, it's always, first of all, it's always about the relationship between the teacher, and student or students, depending on the format. But it's in no way is it like that at all. I mean, I feel like I'm still learning. I feel like I'm still a student. And honestly, students come in, every day, all the time, with things that they've figured out that I had no idea about. And so then I'm like, whose lesson is this really? And I think the answer is it's a lesson for both of us, all the time. And so I mean, I feel like the job title is different, and now I can afford some things that I couldn't afford before, which is good.
Yeah.
But but in terms of perspective, I mean, I'm still learning, and it's like I guess I had this idea. If you have a doctorate in your field, you know everything about your field. Well, I sure know a lot more about my field than I did before I started a doctorate, but I don't know everything about my field. I mean, I think basically the difference is now I know where to go to find answers if I don't know them. I have a better understanding of like the resources that are out there, but I sure don't know everything at all. And so I guess in a way that's been the most surprising thing, because I had this idea that everything was going to be I'm going to make the switch over and everything's going to be different, but it's actually not. And it's in so many ways I feel like it's just a continuation of what I've been doing the whole time. I'm still a student, really, in a lot of ways. And on the converse, students are teachers in their own ways as well. Every class is its own unique experience because of what students bring to the table. And I mean, I modify syllabus, course materials that I use quite a bit to be flexible depending on who's in the class, how the class is going, because of what the students bring to the table. And sometimes, I mean, students say things that are like, wow, I should have realized that. It's like a duh moment for me as a teacher. Okay, well, I'm taking that now, and now, now I know something I didn't know before. So all that to say, I guess it's not the big difference that I thought it would be. It's a continuation of where I've been going, and I feel very lucky, extremely lucky, to be able to teach, to work with students, to learn from students, to be doing what I'm doing.
Wow, I love all of that. I'm like, I want to sign up for your studio now. I have to say, like, from my personal experience, like and I'm being very genuine too. I would be psyched to have you as a professor, and that is honestly was always a very important thing for me as a student, because I'm not even going to say what class I took, but I did have a class in my undergrad where the professor was so rigid and resistant to anything other than what she thought was. And I one time I mentioned this thing. I was like, well, couldn't this be a pentatonic scale in some way, because it uses this pattern and there's no leading tones, there's no whatever. And she was resistant to that. And then I was like, well, could it be both? Because she had another thing in mind, and she was still resistant to it. And I kind of logged that in my mind. And then every time there was another discussion on something, I would ask, and then she would always push back. And there was never like a gray area. And she couldn't be wrong. And so from that point on, I was like, I appreciate, and I would like for my professors to be more okay with the fact that they're not always right,
Mm-hmm.
And so hearing you say that, it's like the flexibility and the openness to what your students, like what their experience is, what it is that they have to offer. or things that they might need, you know,
Mhm.
such an important trait to have as a professor. That's so great to hear. It's like you were saying, like you're like a lifelong student then, you know?
Yeah, that's how I like to think of it. And um, it's I don't know. It's interesting thinking about your experience because there are considerations that brings to at least to me that brings up considerations of women in academia,
Mhm.
or maybe I should say women who academia. but there's and I like obviously I'm not any way related to the situation, but there's um, it's it's interesting thinking of like one of the things that's it's interesting to me being a young female professor is thinking about how many generations I'm removed from women who could not do what I'm doing now,
Mhm.
or for whom it would have been insurmountably difficult. Because my professor at the University of North Texas is amazing female professor, um, Dr. Kimberly Colduevino, and I've talked with her about this. I am going to circle around to what you were talking about just a second ago, but she has a very different perspective on thinking about some of these things than I do, and she's always her perspective has been that she doesn't she doesn't like it to be mentioned that she's a woman, like a woman professor, because she feels that using qualifiers like that like diminishes the value of the fact that she's a person who is a professor of music. And for me, like kind of being her like musical grant, not musical grant student, musical student, uh, or sorry, musical child, I'm like, if you're thinking generationally, I have a very different perspective on that. And I can recognize that for female teachers of some generations, the way that they teach is necessarily influenced by the fact that there may or may not be a lot of women working in the field or weren't when they first started. Um, so I know depending on the situation that sometimes uh, there is more or less pressure. There's less pressure today because there are a lot more women who are professors. And so I have a lot, I mean, I feel that I have, a seemingly infinite amount of freedom to teach the way that I want and to know that I will be treated with respect by my students and by the other members of the faculty.
Mm.
But that's not a privilege that women, even just a generation before me, had. And thinking about women 2 generations before that, like my musical grandparents, if you will, um, there were so few women working in academia that I know that there would have been a lot of pressure, depending on their specific teaching situation, to prove that they were worthy of that position, right? That they had the knowledge and expertise, which of course they did.
Mm.
But there was a time not too long ago when women had to do more to show, they had to show that they had to be cognizant of showing that. And so to make a long story short, I'm curious how much that played into your experiences with that particular professor at that particular time. Who knows? Um, but those are considerations that women who hold academic positions do think about. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm sure that that might be in there somewhere. You know, I honestly don't know. I couldn't know. You
mhm.
know, I mean, from my perspective, like I'm a student. I was a student. You know, so I'm trying to learn the material and I'm understanding it or I'm looking at it from the way that I understand it, and not to say that one is right or one is wrong. You know, and but I only brought that up as a way to point out how the importance of having an instructor who's able to to feel okay to say that, oh, I don't actually know the answer to that, or you know um, uh, just to be wrong. And I'm not saying I was right in that instance either, but
it was definitely a whole tone.
it was all, yeah, it was a pure whole tone. And we can't be having that this day and age of the 21st century. um but yeah, it's and like I that's something that I personally try to do as well with when I'm teaching, is It's like, this is as much as what I could say about this thing. Other than that, I really don't know, you know?
Mhm.
And like I've had professors, especially at Bowling Green, who've said things like, I'm not sure, but let me get back to you on that. And that I always appreciated, because it was, they could just be honest about it. Like, yeah, I don't really know the answer, but like you said, I could figure out where to find it,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, and I think it plays just the same way into the topic that we've been kind of circling around as we've been talking, which is like, breaking into the big, behemoth of classical music. Because I think for me, approaching teaching this way is a way of sort of opening the doors, right? Because if I have it, students all the time ask me questions I don't know the answer to, but I usually know where to go to find the answer, or to find somebody who knows the answer. And so then that's a way of opening the doors to them, because then instead of saying like, oh, here's the answer, or no, your hypothesis is wrong, your answer is not correct, only my answer is correct, or to to present the material that way, I think misses the opportunity to start a larger conversation that could result, if they asked a question and I said, well, this might be the answer. And the student said, well, what about this? And then, I say, well, I usually like to go to this researcher to find this answer. Or, here's an internet resource that has answers to similar questions. And then, I think both of us benefit from that. And hopefully both of us learn from that. And then that way, that student now knows, if they ever have a student who asks the same question, they can say, oh, well, I have this internet resource that, will help you find the answers to some of these related questions that you have. And just opens the door for more conversation, ideally more learning.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
I feel like this, there's what's the school? Is it University of Arkansas?
It's Arkansas State University.
Arkansas State University. Okay, sorry about that.
Don't talk about the University of Arkansas. We don't. No.
I'm just gonna slowly back away. They're so lucky to have you, and there's so much that you've said in this conversation that I want to personally send to them and be like, you need to hear what one of your new faculty members is saying. Put this on the homepage of your website, because she's about to make your whole clarinet and music program tenfold better, like 10 times better.
Well, we did talk about a lot of that in my interview, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because that was, that was a big part. They wanted to know about, they asked a lot of broad questions. They wanted to know about things like my philosophy and my approach to teaching. And a lot of those things that we talked about came up, in maybe a smaller, shorter form, but they did come up when I interviewed, which is one of the reasons I was really excited about this job, because I talked about, the things that I was interested in doing, my approach to teaching and learning. And they said, thumbs up, we love that. We want you here. So I said, well, you heard it. I told you what I think. And so I knew it was going to be a good fit.
That's great. I'm so psyched for you. I mean, when I remember seeing it on Facebook, as you hear most things through Facebook. I was like, my first thought was like, I'm not surprised. And I mean that in a good way too. I mean that like, if anyone's going to be getting to these things, like Erin is that person. And like 2 huge thumbs up to that. I was so happy to hear that.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. But I know, let's see, it's late at 5:00, so we can end it right there. But is there anything else you want to kind of tag at the end? Or, I mean, you mentioned you have a recital next semester, or maybe something to say to the students or anyone, anything.
The recital is going to happen at some point. I haven't made a plan yet. Living in the present.
Living in the present.
See what happens. We'll see when it happens and what it's going to be.